A lot of big questions about where exactly the economy is right now. Are we headed to a recession? What is the Fed going to do in 2023? And how is it going to affect you? To answer, hopefully, some of these questions and gain some insights, we have one of our favorite guests, Professor Richard Wolff. He is a professor of economics emeritus at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. He's also founder of Democracy at Work and host of their show, Economic Update. His latest book is The Sickness is the System: When Capitalism Fails to Save Us from Pandemics or Itself. It's always great to see you, sir.
Good to see you, sir.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So hot off the presses, we have a new inflation report that I wanted to get you to react to. And I know you haven't had a chance because it just came out to dig into all of the details. But here are the headlines. This is from the New York Times. They say the consumer price index climbed by 6.5% in the year through last month. That's down from 7.1% in the November reading as prices declined slightly on a monthly basis. That annual inflation rate was the slowest since October 2021. And they attribute that to a drop in gas prices and also airfares. They go on to say that the economists and Fed officials are more specifically focused on a so-called core inflation measure, which removes food and fuel prices to get a sense of underlying price trends. Less good news there. They say that measure climbed by 5.7% in December from a year earlier, compared with 6% previously, and in line with what forecasters had expected. So can you just explain that for our viewers a little bit in non-economist speak and what you make of that latest report?
Glad to do so. In non-economist speak, and that's certainly the better way to go, even for the economist, if I'm going to be honest, what these numbers tell us is that the inflation our economy is suffering slightly diminished over the last month. Prices are still going up, which means we have an inflation, and they're going up in historic terms much higher than they did for the last 30 years, but not as high as they were rising in the previous months. So it isn't that we're in a deflation, prices are not coming down, it's that they're not going up quite as quickly as they did before. But the sad news wrapped up with that is that wages, which were going up not as fast as prices, not even close, but those are in even worse shape. That is, they are not catching up. In fact, they are shrinking, even relative to the diminished rise in prices. So if you're thinking about what this means for the average American consumer going to the supermarket or the department store, the situation is no better than it has been in recent months. In other words, your ability to buy is not rising as fast as the prices, and therefore what you can afford to actually consume keeps shrinking.
Got it. And Professor, in the context of everything we wanted to discuss today, just a broader check-in with the economy, how do you look at it broadly in terms of the outlook for the next year or so?
Well, I'm afraid the problem is, and it comes right out of these numbers, that what we're seeing is a slow, painful reduction in the inflation, far less than what people need if their standard of living is to improve. And we're paying the price for that modest improvement by laying off workers in large numbers, by a recession that we're either in or coming close to. There's virtual unanimity in the financial press, left, right, and center, about a recession this year. The only real debate is how soon will we get, how bad will it be, and how long will it last? So we're paying a heavy price. It's a little bit like noticing in those numbers that airline prices have slightly diminished their increase. They've been zooming up, and the beauty of the story is the service we're getting from the airlines is laughable. I'm trying to be polite. Literally over the last few days. So yeah, the price isn't going up, but what you're getting for what you're paying is shrinking really seriously. And I think that's a general prediction for where we're going. We have not solved the underlying problems of this economy. Our levels of debt government, corporate, and individual are higher than ever and rising very fast. The inflation means people's income isn't enough, so they're going out on a limb again, using their credit cards and every other way of getting credit. That's a very dangerous story, has been the cause of trouble twice in this new century, and is building up again now. There ought to be a lot more concern, and I suspect there would be, except the folks in charge always have a hard time admitting to economic problems, and so paint a very rosy picture. I'm not among them, and I tell you, most of my colleagues, even though that's unusual, agree with me on this subject.
One of the big heavyweights in terms of neoliberal economists, Larry Summers, who was former Treasury Secretary and served in other high-level positions in terms of advising presidents on the economy, took some time out from his luxury tropical vacation to call explicitly for higher unemployment. Let's take a listen to that, and I want to get your reaction on the other side.
I've been speaking in a different way about the Fed in the last couple of months than I had been before, and that's because, for whatever reason, they have come around to views quite close to mine. They think inflation is the primary concern. They explicitly recognize that there's going to need to be increases in unemployment to contain inflation.
What do you make of remarks like that, Professor?
Well, to be honest with you, I'm outraged. I find this a level of relaxed calm about wrecking people's lives, millions of people to be unemployed, because that's what we're talking about, given the size of our country, millions of people losing their jobs or losing hours if they have the kind of jobs that vary that way. That's an enormous burden to put on them, on their families, on the communities they live in that depend on their ability to spend. All of that in a breezy conversation made worse by the fact, and this is crucial, that it isn't true. Raising interest rates and squashing down an economy by doing that isn't the only way to deal with an inflation. And I won't even bother you with reminding everyone that the reason we created the Federal Reserve over 100 years ago was to prevent inflation. Not to come in after it's done its horrible work and fix it, but to prevent it because it's such a burden. They failed at doing that, and there ought to be a bit more of an acknowledgement and admission of the failure. Having said it, let me remind everyone, there are other ways of dealing with an inflation. I'm going to give you two quick examples. Number one, 1971, Richard Nixon, hardly a progressive in the office of president, goes on radio television August 15th, and he says we have a terrible inflation, which they did at that time. And I'm going to do something about it right away, which he did. He declared the following: as of tomorrow morning, any business that raises the price of anything, you're going to get a visit from government officials, and they're going to arrest you and throw you in jail. That's how we're going to stop the rise in prices. And to be fair, he said, the same applies to unions or workers who push for higher wages. We will do the same. This policy is called, and it was called this then, a wage price freeze, because literally that's what it does. It was passed, signed by the president. 90 days was the first length of it. It was extended. And you know why? It stopped the inflation on a dime. Does that kind of policy have problems? Sure. But every policy to deal with the failure of an inflation has its costs, its risks, and its problems. But to deal with this as if there were nothing other for us to do than to schedule a recession for millions of people is not only unfair and unjust, it's not altogether honest. And Mr. Summers, who's a colleague of mine, he knows this very well.
Wow.
I think that is all very well said. So great to have your expertise on these matters, Professor. Thank you so much for taking some time with us.
Thank you, sir.
My pleasure, and thanks for covering it in an open way. It's really a big help to the national conversation.
Yeah, our pleasure.
All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. Really appreciate it. We had a great Counterpoint show yesterday. They had the breaking news segment. They did a really good job. They had some very touching tributes, to suicide victims and elsewhere. So anyway, I love the show. I'm glad that they're on Wednesday. And you guys get 4 straight days of content, which premium members you guys seem to be loving. Don't forget about our live show in Austin. Otherwise, we've got great content all for the weekend, and we'll see you on Monday.
Yeah, also people are super psyched to meet Mac and Griffin.
Oh, yes, they were. Thank you. Thank you. You guys were very nice to Mac and Griffin.
Yes,
Griffin in particular got a kick out of it with his mustache. So.
Thank you for giving them a warm welcome, because I can assure you they are doing a phenomenal job. So we're super grateful to have them, and super grateful for you guys for making it happen. Have a great weekend. We'll see you back here next week. Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now, and Saagar and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us, and if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.